Nero battue Tåga vi samlar upp Hejsan pojkar.
Hello and welcome to today's Battletech review. Today we're going to be looking at the Viking and Viking 2C. To call it a 2C is a little bit of a stretch. It does look a little bit different nowadays. They've rebuilt the body kit to make it just a little bit different enough from the Viking to have people say, well, it's a new mech, but it is roughly still the same chassis and the same base design specs. So to call it a 2C is a little bit odd. It's still a very good mech and one that has been fairly popular with a subset of the population. Really, people around the Rasalhague Republic, the Comp Guards and the Word of Blake people, and any mercenaries who worked in that general area. It is probably one of the superior fire support mech of this current generation, in the same family as things like the Longbow or the Stalker, and it even shares the same design issues as the Longbow and the Stalker, which makes me still like my Archer more than some of those mechs because I like having arms. So let's get into it. Some people who've been following this account and some people who have been chatting with me on the chatter web might remember that I got 4 Vikings, one in each of the configuration, from a Rasalhague Dominion trader. The price was okay. It wasn't a deep discount. It wasn't overinflated. It was pretty much where I would expect to pay for a machine of that type. It was the kind of deal that I couldn't skip if I didn't want to have the bosses show up at my door and ask me why I skipped it. So I put the money down and got the things into the shop. Things were looking pretty okay until we started to clean things up. We pulled the armor plates off, foot actuators started falling off, and good things, those things were on Gertrude's, or the whole thing would have fallen apart. We need to reassemble, well, the lower part of the leg assembly on every single one of them. We also had issues with the gyro assembly and how it was connected on every single one of those machines. So that was a bit of extra work that I had to do. I really don't know if I got scammed or if someone at Grumium was just not doing a very good job for a while, or if these things have been reconditioned and rebuilt a whole bunch of times. It is what it is when you buy mechs on the second-hand market, and it is a thing that you need to learn as a mercenary that, well, you might not get always a mech in perfect condition, even if it seems to be when you buy it. The Viking dates from the era between the Battle of Tukayid and the fall of the Second Star League at the start of the Jihad. This was a period where the Rasalhague Republic and Comstar were really close for a variety of reasons. Basically, Comguard was what was protecting what was left of the Republic at the time, because the Comguard needed a place to stay, and the Republic needed a military force in order to not disappear overnight to either the clans, or the Lyrans, or the Draconis Combine. Things got progressively worse over time as the Word of Blake took Terra from the Loyalist Comstar people in 3059, meaning that all the Loyalist Comstar people basically aggregated around that Rasalhague Republic region. Anastasius Fox Comguard needed machines to replace what they had lost in the Battle of Terra, and with the factories being gone on Terra as well, they needed new things to come out. And it started with a replacement for the Mongoose. The Beowulf was the choice design for this, and it's certainly a choice. It's much bigger than the Mongoose, it's much better armed than the Mongoose, it has all sorts of fancy electronics that the Mongoose doesn't really have, but in the end, it can basically be used as a battering ram, while the Mongoose is, well, a scout and a light striker. Comguard would have more and more problems with their wayward brothers in the Word of Blake, and they were still focusing on fighting the clans at the time, so there was a whole variety of reasons why they were looking for new machines, and especially better armed and more modern machines. The Viking is the kind of machine that can and would be used against the clan war machine fairly effectively. LRMs are one of the area where the clans have an advantage, but it's not as omnipresent as with things like laser weapons, laser pulse weapons to be more precise. You've got the same kind of range, you've got the same kind of damage based on clustering of missiles, so it's roughly the same thing as a clan LRM, except that your missile launchers are much heavier, much bigger, and they do have that minimum range, which is a bit of an issue. It doesn't matter much here because the Viking just decided to take that to an extreme and just pack as many missiles as they could on the thing and hope that you could stay out of trouble by staying behind other machines like that Beowulf. From its introduction in 3059, Grumman kept building the Viking for just about every customer that needed them, mainly Comguard and mercenaries. You have that basic LRM Viking, of course, but you also have a ballistics and the laser Viking. You have an artillery Viking with an arrow 4. You've got a Word of Blake Viking because, well, at some point, the Word of Blake had a whole lot of them as well, and went with something a little bit less crazy, but still crazy enough. Grumman sold them far and wide, especially to people who needed that heavy fire support in a variety of manner. Things got progressively worse for the company, however, due to a lack of procurement contracts from the new Rasalhague Dominion when the Rasalhague Republic and the Ghost Bears basically merged. They had to start striking deals and they introduced the Viking 2C before they came to some more financial issue. Grumman basically had to sell itself to Bergen after a while. They're still somewhat independent, but with a bigger company on top of you, it's sometimes a little bit harder to make choices of your own. The 90-ton VKG2F is fairly advanced as long as you can afford it, and as long as you can afford to maintain it. But it's still decently cheap because it doesn't use that fancy of an engine, and it is meant to be easy to maintain. That's probably a good thing because, like I said, they sometimes fall apart when you get them in the shop, apparently. The engine is a common enough GM270, giving you a top speed of 54 kilometers per hour. You might have more Excel 270s nowadays floating around, but the regular 270 has been in production for quite some time and has been used for a variety of machine. You can then double heat sinks in the engine, which is decently enough. It might run a little bit hot if you start shooting all your missiles all the time. The chassis is built of endo steel, while the body is protected by 15.5 tons of standard plates because there's just no room to stick ferrofibrous in on that thing. For all the missiles that are involved, at least on the basic model, there's Artemis 4 guidance systems being added to all of them. The main weapons of the Viking are allowed 7 tons of reloads, which allow you to stay in the fight for fairly long, but you've got no case protection for it, which is a little bit odd in my opinion because you've got a standard engine on there. Maybe you could move things around, but that would actually be a little bit difficult. The ammo that this feeds is a pair of Shugenja 20 rack of LRMs in the arm, while the shoulders mount a Shugenja's 15 rack of LRM. Overall, you got 70 LRM tubes on one thing, which is an awful lot, and if something gets close by to you, well, you might need a little bit more protection. For that, well, you got a pair of Chiscomp 32 small lasers in the nose. Sometimes it's ER small lasers on some models, or usually custom models, and it will work as point defense. Finally, you also have the famous exploding knees of the Viking, which mount a pair of Sperry Browning machine guns. It's funny looking, but it does work fairly well, and it does take care of infantry really quickly. Also, the Sperry Browning machine gun is probably one of the most common, if not the most common machine gun in existence, having been around for now maybe 1,050 years, something along those lines. It's just that good. The VKG2G is the gun version of the Viking. The G is probably to mean guns there, I guess. And really, it is a big gun unit, even though you would not expect it. The LRM racks are completely removed, and on one shoulder you mount an LB-10X autocannon, which will be pretty good against air targets, and to deal some decent damage and peppering things at decent range, while the other arm has the big Gauss rifle over the shoulder. Both of those are fed by 2 tons of reload. You're going to be able to stay in the fight decently long. For energy weapon, one of the arm mounts a trio of medium pulse laser, while the opposite one mounts a large pulse laser, which is pretty reasonable as far as weapons goes. You get 17.5 tons of plates, a little bit more than the original, and you need 12 double heat sinks to keep you cool if you start shooting all of those lasers. For additional protection, you get a Guardian ECM as well, which was getting more and more popular at the time, as C3 units were getting, very, very common. The VKG-3W was built off the original 2G Viking by the people at the Word of Blake and their various associates. The main big difference is that you add an improved C3 unit in the center torso. It's that little cupola there at the back of that particular model. So you get 17 tons of plates, and you have case bins in this case to protect you against catastrophic ammo explosions. So these things are actually tougher than your original Viking. The arms now mount a pair of 7 tubes of multi-missile launchers, so you do have a whole lot less racks of missiles on there, but you will have pretty good tactical flexibility with still 7 tons of reloads. And at close range, well, that's 28 tubes of SRMs that can just go off and blow you up. The knees now mount a set of Streak 2 tubes of SRM for some reason. And for direct fire, you get a pair of light autocannon 2s, also for some reason. It's an odd setup. I'm not 100% sold on it, but you do get a lot of flexibility on this one. It's really the Streak SRM 2s that I'm really not sold on. I would probably have put, either the exploding the machine guns or lasers in the knees, something along those lines. The final base Viking came out as the VKG-3A A4 Artillery. And this is really an artillery platform rather than a fire support platform because an Arrow 4 launcher is not going to be very good at direct fire. Your main weapon is that Arrow 4 launcher fed by 4 tons of reload, meaning that your entire right side of the design is basically that Arrow 4 assembly there. It's not a bad thing, and 4 tons of reloads means you're going to be able to stay in the fight very long and support people for quite some time. And if things go south, you have a pair of MML-7 fed by 3 tons of reload for some flexibility, in case protected bins as well. So if you get shot, it's not going to be that terrible. For protection, you also have a pair of medium pulse lasers at closer range, well, much closer range. And you can shoot up infantry with a small pulse laser that is mounted in the nose or on top of the head, like in this one here. They don't quite know where they want to put it. Under the nose is really the best place for it because, well, you're going to have a wider range of fire against things that are on the ground, like infantry. It's not the worst artillery platform out there. I prefer it to the catapult, which is fairly popular as well. And, if you're going to go with a mech with artillery, the Arrow 4 is probably the better one out there. The Viking was still popular with a lot of second-line units, support commanders in the inner sphere, and such, and Grumman really needed a quick influx of cash, so he approached Ark Royal Mechworks to build a new design for the machine, because Ark Royal had a little bit more experience with clan-grade technology. The big difference between the original and this one is really the armor. On this one, you get 31 tons of Ardent plate with Case 2 equipment to protect the ammo. This is almost unbreakable at some point. Getting shots inside the armor is going to take you an eternity. With those Case 2s, even if the ammo gets it's not going to destroy the mech. It is quite surprising. The chassis is now made of the good Clan Endo steel, which was available both to Ark Royal Mechworks and Grumman now that they were under the purview of the Rasalhague Dominion. And you've got 11 double heat sinks to keep the mech cool, which is usually enough. With the Ardent plate, you can only get a top speed of 43 kilometers per hour, but, you're going to be staying in the back and shooting LRMs, so it shouldn't be that much of an issue. The other big change is that all the LRMs are now to clan standard, meaning that they're no longer limited by a silly thing like a minimum range. Something can walk up right in front of a Viking 2, and it will regret it anyways. To add to this, you have the Artemis 5 guidance being set up on every single launcher, meaning that you have better basic accuracy on top of the better clustering opportunities on the launchers. So even a less than stellar pilot will be able to do pretty good things with that. These small lasers are swapped for modern IER micro lasers, which are basically the same thing, just a little bit lighter. And you still have the wonderful knee machine guns in case you have to take out infantry. This basically means this is a bit slower than the original Viking, but a lot more efficient and a lot more hard to kill. Grumman now being a subsidiary of Bergen, they keep making Viking 2Cs and Cyclops as well, mostly the clan standard. They've started also building a rebranded gun Viking 2C2, or whatever they're going to call it, And it is a basic upgrade here. All the weapons are swapped to Clan Standard, except the LB-10X, which is replaced with an AG-20, and the armor being replaced with Ardent Armor. You've got less than on the regular Viking 2C, because even with swapping weapons for some things that are lighter, it's not as much as 31 tons of Ardent Armor. But a Gauss Rifle, an AG-20, a large pulse laser, and 3 medium pulse lasers does make that thing quite a scary customer, and decent enough in direct fire engagements. Unfortunately, all big missile boats like this suffer from the same issue. They don't have arm actuators. Once you fall down, getting back up is incredibly difficult. Double this up when you've got Ardent Armor, because Ardent Armor makes it even harder for someone to get up. You could replace the armor on the leg with regular ferrofibrous or regular plates and just keep the top portion there with Ardent Armor. It would make it easier to get back up, but it would make you a little bit less reliable. Just don't get shot is what a lot of elite pilots will tell you, but I can tell you from experience that even as a fire support guy, this really doesn't work. The fighting will always get next to you, and there's always going to be people going crazy with a super fast light mech trying to get right in front of your Viking or archer or longbow or whatever. If you're lucky, you're going to be the one landing to kick first, and usually if you're in a Viking and you kick a light mech, they will probably lose that leg. I still love the Viking in the end. It is a big, nasty piece of hardware that can cause a lot of damage, and will cause a lot of techs to swear because, well, there seems to be quite a few lemons amongst the whole production line. So I thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a nice rest of your day, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.